This episode of Entrepreneurs in Quarantine, that is my high-lot intro right there. This episode is really talking one-on-one with a pilot that the community knows really well. My good friend, tell us who you are, where you come from, and what's happening in your industry, man.
Well, Jamie, first off, my name's Parham Ranjbar. We've been good friends for many years. I am an airline pilot, and right now I fly for Sunwing Airlines.
So obviously we've seen you in the press quite a bit. You've been vocal on social media. There's been a sad side to it, and there's been optimism, and you've been very cordial with your colleagues. And we've all gone through the heartfelt posts and the camaraderie with your industry. Where are we now with Sunwing and the industry as a whole?
Well, the industry as a whole, I mean, be it Sunwing, Air Transat, most of the Canadian carriers, including the American legacy carriers and fractional airlines, they're all dealing with the same thing, Jamie. Right now, we're calling for mass layoffs. American Airlines just announced 50% overall. 20 to 30% overall reduction. United's at 50% overall.
Wow.
Delta just parked 600 airplanes out of the 912 some odd machines they have in their fleet. I'm sure you guys heard in the news that Sunwing has laid off all their employees. Air Transat will be doing the same thing. And Air Canada is looking at about $500 million in cuts, 5,000 flight attendants and 600 pilots. And they're at also at a significant reduction in their operation as well. So,
yeah. Unbelievable. So obviously this is a scary time. I've gotten to know you over the years. You are someone who's also very entrepreneurial. What is your take on the travel industry? Because you were flying, you were repatriating Canadians.
Yes.
Back home. I mean, you were part of the hero crew that were bringing Canadians back. Tell us about those missions, things that you went through, things that you saw.
Well, I mean, it was all kind of sudden, Jamie. We didn't know. We knew the pandemic was kind of getting worse across, the U.S., Europe especially, and, not long after that, Canada. So basically, for us, it was kind of a shock. When we got the email from the company saying, look, at this point we will be laying off and this is your notice, I'm sorry, let me just...
It's all good.
Sorry about that. Basically, the next day I was scheduled to work. Now, when I went into work, it all of a sudden, it kind of hits you when you go in. And I walked into the crew room and we have all our crews there where everybody's normally in a great mood, laughing, joking around, having a great time. And then all of a sudden now I walk in and the air is just heavy. You can see everybody's pretty somber. And, speaking to my colleagues at other airlines, it's pretty much been the same thing. And it was going from a normal day where I was operating a Punta Cana turn that now was changed and it's now been labeled a rescue flight. So that changes the landscape significantly now, because now we know that we need to get, our passengers home. We need to get them home safely, but at the same time, we know we're going to be out of a job. So it's a very, very challenging event when you go into work. I mean, I found out, on the Monday, let's say, and on the Tuesday I was operating, you know what I mean? So this news was fresh for a lot of us, and it was very, very hard to go into work knowing that, hey, you know what, we're about to lose our jobs, but you know what, I mean, you saw my posts online, and it's very important to kind of, especially in the business that we're in, you got to kind of put that aside when you're at work, and you got to focus and you got to stay sharp out there, because, safety is everything when it comes to aviation, and you cannot deviate from it regardless of what's going on. So when you go to work, you're a trained professional, you do your job, you get your passengers home safely. And
Sure.
You deal with the events as they come, because I mean, obviously with the airlines, everybody's been kind of hit with this, and it's worse than what occurred on 9/11. This was basically like a light switch. You know what I mean? They went from 100% operation to shutting it down. So no one's ever seen this before, and it's unprecedented for our industry.
So obviously you're a family man. Your wife is also very entrepreneurial, someone who's been in our circle for quite some time, with her investment strategies and her own business. Now, how do you keep a smile on? And you're in the air. You're kind of you're literally front and center of the kind of COVID transportation repatriation. How do you keep a smile on your face? How do you get through this with your family?
Well, Jamie, I mean, it's always been my philosophy that when I go to work, you know what I mean, be happy, have a good time, enjoy yourself. If you're not fit to fly, don't go to work. If you're having issues at home, you know, call off sick, don't go in. And obviously, this news for my family was, you know, we kind of took it as a shock, but I think you know us well enough to understand that, you know, myself and my wife, we've generated multiple streams of income. So for us right now, one of those streams of incomes has been cut off. And we don't know for how long. However, how I stay positive when I go to work is I just try to, you know, I just remember that, hey, you know what, guys, this is temporary. I think the airlines are actually doing the right thing because when you
Sure.
look at the big picture, Jamie, immediately when you hear something, oh my God, I'm being laid off, I'm losing my job, it's temporary. You know, at least in our case, a lot of airlines and a lot of smaller fractionals will unfortunately go bankrupt after this. So the landscape will change by the time we come out of this. But in my case, I look at the big picture and I'm saying, look, the airlines have to do these layoffs. They have to go ahead and start laying people off and start with budget cuts immediately in order for the, you know, overall longevity of these companies to survive. Airlines, as you know, in a lot of cases, the profit margins can be razor thin sometimes,
Sure.
and they don't have any reason to keep us on if those airplanes are parked. And it makes absolute sense. I look at it and say, hey, if I was the CEO of a major airline and they're shutting everything down, they're closing down borders, and people are scared to fly, and people are being quarantined. Well, it doesn't make sense for me to keep my crews and, you know, all the other people, dispatchers, crew schedulers, you know, rampers on the schedule. It simply doesn't make sense to put them on payroll because these airplanes, once they park, you know, we still incur an expense as an airline. It's not free to park an airplane. You still have
Sure.
to insure them. You still have to maintain them. You still have to
Yeah.
pay for the real estate that they're sitting on. So
I got
so
you.
that's how I stay positive when I go to work, is I look at the big picture and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, in the immediate you know, in the immediate time that we're in right now,
Yeah.
uh, it's not fun. However, I know that they're doing this to protect our jobs longevity wise. You know what I mean? So it's tough today, but it's short term pain for long term gain. We've all heard that before.
Now, when you talked about one of your streams of income, are one of those streams collecting and reselling Marvel and other collectibles that we see behind you? Is that a stream?
Yes, my man cave. I'm in my man cave right now, Jamie, and you know what? I have not sold any of them. I have had offers. Believe it or not, one of the highest offers I got was for one of my Iron Man figures is about 10,000 US. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
So you talked about multiple streams. What have you learned in this crisis about business, about entrepreneurship in general? What lessons have you drawn?
Well, the lessons I've drawn is always, you know, plan for the future. Don't always look at immediate. I mean, there's no secret that look at the stock market, for example. You know, me and my wife are well involved in that. The market was way overextended. People are spending, household debt is through the roof. And one thing I've learned from this is, hey, you know what? When my mom and dad, you know, as a kid saying, hey, save your money and invest it, take that dollar and stretch it, turn it into $50, turn it into $100. Jane was the same thing. You know, she was, you know, 6, 7 years old, selling cookies and candy in her school that she'd go out and buy at the corner store. So,
Sure, sure,
you know, you learn and you see the effects of it now. I mean, it's one thing to be told and to prepare for it. And I was blessed enough to have a family that taught me, and also
sure.
to marry a woman that, you know, is extremely entrepreneurial and is very avid in the stock market and very well
Sure.
known. That, you know, it's pretty serious now, and it's when you watch the news, it's very sad to see the number of people that are having a tough time surviving with their 2 week paycheck.
Yeah.
And that should never happen. So I've learned, you know, basically to answer your question that, you know, it's not just, you know, when they're telling you to learn how to invest your money and to stretch that dollar, I've learned now and I've seen it. Now I'm seeing it live for the first time in my life, where it's crucial. You know, it's a critical time right now to have money saved in the bank. You know, you don't need to go out and lease a new car every 2 years. You don't need to go out and buy that new iPhone, you know, every year that it comes out. It's just people
Yeah.
are wasting money, and now they're, unfortunately, you know, with the going into a recession, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to pay for it. You know what I mean? So
So
Um,
what I'm hearing from you is the lesson learned is that your parents were right all those years, and you should
Absolutely.
listen to your parents.
Listen to your parents, pay close attention, learn how to stretch a dollar, and because I've
Save for a
never
rainy.
experienced something like this in my life.
Yeah,
I mean, even in 9/11, I was still a student. I was learning how to fly. My parents weren't affected by it. They had money in the bank. They were working. And now this is the first time, which is, I mean, unprecedented, the number of people that are out of work now. And they're strapped. They're already
sure.
strapped within a week or two of being out. So
It's scary.
definitely, I think people are going to have a different mindset coming out of this.
That brings us to my final question. Where does society go from here? Where does the travel industry go from here? Where do you think we're going to be after this? Will we learn certain lessons, or do you think history will just repeat itself?
Jamie, I think right now with what's going on in the airlines, I think they're doing the best they can given the circumstances that they're in. I think the industry will come out very differently. I think we will look very different as a landscape when you look over and see that, at the end of all this, there will unfortunately be some casualties. There will
Sure.
be some airlines that will go bankrupt. There will be some companies, smaller companies that won't make it through this. A lot of people say, well, competition is healthy, and that's true. But we have that competition, right? We have the major airlines in Canada, we have the major airlines in the U.S.,
Sure.
Europe, so on and so forth. That's not going to go away. These companies are financially sound, so you're not losing the competition. But I think the airlines are going to tighten up a little bit coming out of this, and they're going to make sure that they have a set cash reserve on hand, so they don't have to rely on, for example, these government bailouts that a lot of the airlines are talking about. Because, I mean, when you look at United, for example, for them to go and cut overall 50%,
Yeah.
that's massive, and I'll give you an idea. When an airline like United is operating at full capacity, if fuel goes down 1 cent a barrel, 1 cent a barrel, the airline saves $2 million for that day for the operation. So, uh, you know, it's hard to say right now because the landscape is still changing so rapidly, and the numbers are changing too with the airlines. They're reducing capacity, the people are getting laid off, and those numbers are changing. It's
Hmm.
increasing from what I'm seeing day to day.
Yeah.
So, having said that, we don't really know what the airlines are going to look like coming out of this, but I think these airlines that will survive are already airlines that have kind of prepared for this sort of situation. They are financially sound.
Parham, a pilot, an entrepreneur, a father, an avid Tony Stark collector with an original Stan Lee behind him. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Entrepreneurs in Quarantine, substituting, suits for beards and man caves.
That's
Thanks,
right.
thanks for being with me, man. It was a fun chat, and I look forward to touching base with you when we're out of this.
Definitely, Jamie. Take care of yourself.
Take care,
Good
brother.
talking to you, bud.